Hello and welcome to the Dirty Air Podcast. I am Jonathan Merriman, filling in for Chuck Bush. Sitting across from Matthew Dillner on the phone, Regan Smith joining us. Guys, low downforce weather, pit road speeding. Could Vegas have been any crazier?
Oh, it couldn't have been. It was one of the best races of the year and probably the best race we've ever seen at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. I mean, it had me at the edge of my seat covering it. And I know, talking to a few fans that I know that were watching at home, they thought it was spectacular as well.
Regan, you were in the car.
Yeah, and I got to agree. I thought that the racing was good. This package is seemingly allowing the cars to get closer together, be able to make moves on each other at tracks that we typically have not seen that. Vegas is typically been a track where we get spread out and have trouble catching the guy in front of us because of the aerotight, and we just didn't see that on Sunday. So, 2 thumbs up for Vegas and for this aero package so far, and I think it gets everybody excited to see what it continues to do at the other tracks as we move forward here.
Now, how big of an impact was the weather for you guys? Pre-race was absolutely insane, and then the sandstorm that came through midway through the race.
The haboob? What do they call it, a haboob?
A haboob is an Arab word for the sandstorm, yeah. How crazy was that to be in the car when, that sandstorm came through?
Well, I can definitely tell you guys that was my first experience with a haboob, as you called it. I've never heard that word before, but it was crazy at the racetrack. I know pre-races, everybody was watching. We saw the wind coming, we saw the rain coming, and we're out there standing next to the cars, and the drivers are all looking at each other like, "Are we supposed to stay here? Are we supposed to leave? What are we going to do?" Because it's coming pretty quick at us, and essentially, I think we all just kind of tried to get somewhere where we were either inside a building, inside our haulers for a few minutes. And, as that wind picked up, it was some of the strongest wind I remember at a racetrack without a thunderstorm or something like that being involved. Fast forward to the race, and it wasn't as big of an effect in the cars as what I was anticipating at the start. I think the only time that it was a major issue was when the wind would get to gusting. And the gusting was a problem because you couldn't predict it. You didn't know when it was going to hit your car. You might take off up the racetrack for no reason, or you might get loose into the corner for no reason. I felt like turn 3 was the toughest part of the racetrack because of the way the direction the wind was blowing. It was giving us a little bit of a tailwind down the backstretch, as we get going that way, and it just seemed to make that area much more difficult than some of the other spots. The exit of turn 4 was interesting because you would shift from the wind being kind of to your back to all of a sudden the wind being on the nose of your race car. So you could be up the racetrack and think you were tight and about to hit the wall, and all of a sudden it was just like a magical downforce button, and your car would just stick to the racetrack and go wherever you wanted to. So interesting conditions, and again, I thought it was going to be worse than what it was in the cars.
Now, we mentioned low downforce earlier, and we just finished talking about the winds and the sandstorm. Is that kind of the perfect storm that had Matt Kenseth kind of go sideways there all on his own? Have you had a chance to see that replay?
Yeah, I've seen that. I don't think the wind played a factor in that particular one. If you watch close, you can see him and the 78 are pretty close to each other, which gets you, typically in that situation can get you loose in anyways, especially when you're turning off the wall. I actually think what affected that car more than anything else was, I believe, the 21 car kind of cut down behind him and in front of the 4 car. He filled a hole that was there. And when he came down, it was the exact same time that car started coming around on Matt. And a heck of a save by Matt, first off, to not actually spin out and take more cars than what he did. And unfortunately, as he went up the racetrack and was saving it, the 24 had nowhere to go and ran into the back of him. But I felt like it had more to do with the 21 car disrupting the air and the fact that he was in a vulnerable position anyways next to the 78 car. The wind right there, maybe it played a little factor, but I just think in the pack it didn't play that much of a factor for him.
Yeah, and I mean, just a weird weekend in Las Vegas overall. We look at the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series both. People had a lot of problems also on pit road. They handed out, I think, 8 pit road speeding penalties. It was just insane that these guys are coming off that racetrack, getting to pit road, and then they get tagged with a penalty before they come off the end of it. So I guess, Dillner, we'll start with you really quick. What do you think that's attributed to? You were down there when everybody was coming off turn 4.
The bottom line, it's auto racing, and we're all competitive. The speed limit was 45 miles per hour plus 5. NASCAR gives you a tolerance, But here's the deal. We're racing in the elite form of motorsports in the world. These guys aren't aiming at 45. They're aiming at 50. So that tolerance, each team pushes the tolerance right there. And I think that's what we're seeing is you're alongside. Brad Keselowski was alongside another car. If you're looking at that other car and you split second, not looking at your tack, or if your tack's slightly off, is what happened with Eric Jones, and they figured that out, it's such a small little finite deal there that can cost you so many spots on the racetrack.
Regan, what's that like coming off turn 4, trying to get in that first section of pit road we know is shorter?
We try to time our downshifts perfectly to where we go down to second gear right before we get to the stripe. And if our RPM for pit road is 5,000 RPMs in second gear, we try to hit that perfectly when we cross that stripe so that we're not giving up any, fraction of a time, especially on green flag pit stops. I would say what we saw happening was a short segment at the start of pit road. You got a 90-foot segment. Typically, if we know we're over the speed limit just a little bit, we can give back some of that time. We can trick the system because it is timing lines. We can slow down and go down to 2,000 RPM for 2 or 3 seconds if we have to, and then speed back up, which essentially makes the computer think that we've been okay and we didn't get a penalty, we didn't do anything wrong. With a 90-foot segment, you can't do that. If you're over when you cross the line, you're already to the next line before you've had a chance to give back that time, as we call it. And that's what I think that's a lot of what we saw happening on the green flag stops. Obviously, Brad Keselowski's deal was a little bit different. He was trying to make up time on pit road exit. The other thing I want to point out, too, is I know that we've got this 45 mile an hour plus 5 rule. I think at some point we got to just say, hey, speed limit's 50.
I agree.
And throw out this whole plus 5 thing, because it makes no sense to me, right? We know we're all doing 50 miles an hour. We know that we're all shooting for 49.8 all the way down pit road. And I think if we just have a set number, it's going to be a little less confusing for everybody.
Take us through the dash setups in these cars. We've talked about the digital dash before. What colors do you have set up on your digital dash to let you know you're at RPM or pit road speed with your RPM and that you're over? Is it blue and red? Is it green and red? What colors do you have set up in yours?
Well, I'm a Christmas guy. I like Christmas, so I try to go with green and red as much. No, I'm just kidding. The way I've got mine set right now is basically green to red. So once you go green, you got plenty of room to go. I go red, and I want to run all my red lights on my dashboard. So let's just say there's 10 lights. I don't know the exact number, but I want all 10 of those lights red. If I go over the speed limit, I have one blue light that clicks on. When that blue light clicks on, I need to be careful because I'm right at the number. That's precisely 50 miles an hour if that blue light clicks on the dashboard or on the dash. And then if I go 2 blue lights on the dashboard, I'm speeding and my tack starts flashing at me to grab my attention and say, hey, you're going too fast, slow down. The challenge is getting to those lights, and with this new dashboard, we go through the lights so quick, and it's not as smooth as what the old tacks that we used to run were. Those tacks were very precise, and the needle on our tack and the lights on our tack was almost a 1-to-1 ratio. If you were at 9,000 RPM, you were at 9,000 RPM. This new dashboard, it's got a jump to it, almost like a computer. If you can imagine an old computer that's a little slow, or maybe old internet back in the day, dial-up or something, and it's just a little jumpy. That's what we're kind of dealing with this system still, as it gets, as we get it improved and as we start updating it and adding things onto it.
And let's get this clear. Speaking with most of the teams, this is a driver responsibility, pit road speed being on there. Of course, you know what your settings are. So when something happens like what happened with Eric Jones in the Xfinity Series, where 1 or 2, 3 pit stops, they had pit road speeding penalties, they know where to adjust, because then they go to the engineer with that team who says, okay, if we were 5,000 RPMs at second gear, we know if we go 4,000 RPMs at second gear, that's so many miles per hour. So that's how they adjust accordingly from that point.
Well, and all that stuff's happening at close to 200 miles an hour coming off turn 4. But this weekend, we're going to slow things down. We're going to Phoenix. The place races like a short track. Kevin Harvick owns that place as of late. When it doesn't rain,
it's like a Kevin Harvick charity event here lately.
Well, they named it after Jeff Gordon. They might as well just start naming Phoenix after Kevin Harvick.
Well, Regan, what can we expect when we hit that racetrack? There's a lot of quirks about that place, but like we said, Harvick dominated. But what do you expect to see when we go to Phoenix?
Well, I think the main thing we're going to see is some loose race cars again, as we've seen at some of these first races. I actually believe we're going to see looser cars at Phoenix than most of the places we've been throughout Atlanta. because of what was going on with the tire and how that racetrack just naturally is. I think Phoenix is one place that we haven't seen a lot of guys having trouble getting into the corners lately. That could be coming back. I know everything I've heard about this aero package there, it affected the cars in the braking zone. This is the first time all year long we're going to use heavy braking at a racetrack. So the brake balance may be different than what we're accustomed to. You might see guys working with that quite a bit. And, the natural thing to say is we're going to see Kevin Harvick up front. We're going to see him be extremely fast. For whatever reason, he is very good at that racetrack, and he's just got a feel that he's found and it works for him in everything that he sits in there.
Well, I was talking to Chris Rice, an analyst we have here at NASCAR.com, and he's also a crew chief in the Xfinity Series for Colleague Racing, and he jokingly said to me, you're going to have 8 tires to go into a corner. He said, you're going to have your 4 and the guy next to you's 4. So there's going to be a lot of beating and banging and leaning on each other in Phoenix. Do you hold that to be true, Regan?
I do, and I think Chris is spot on with that if you have a car to your outside and you're trying to get past them on the bottom, these cars are going to be very loose. And, it's just a product of taking the downforce off of them and where we're taking the downforce off of them. So Phoenix has always been one of those places that you can make a mistake inside, guys, even with the downforce when it was on the cars. And this is only going to make that easier to have happen, and it's going to make it more difficult. So I'd like to see the outside groove come in at Phoenix. We haven't seen that since they repaved it. This may be the time that it finally does. We're going to have to wait and see. I think the combination of where the gearing is with the cars and whatever the tires that Goodyear's bringing could play a factor in that. This is a new tire. We don't know a lot about it yet, so we're going to have to wait and see in the practices how much it falls off. But I do know it's a stickier tire that should have more fall off than what we've had there in the past.
Yeah, with more fall off in that tire and more seasoning to that asphalt. That asphalt there at Phoenix is ultra grippy. Okay, we should see a better race at Phoenix, and the other variable that you throw in there is that dog leg in the backstretch and how exciting it is. And now with maybe a little less grip with age on that pavement and the new low downforce package, I think we're going to see some more guys mixing it up, especially in that part of the track. I think that's where the make it or break it zone might be in this race.
Well, here on the Dirty Air podcast, we like to have fun, like Dillner says. And how we do that is we play fantasy live on NASCAR.com. Regan, you're kicking everybody's butt in the point standings. You're up about 90 points. Who do you like at Phoenix? And you can't take Harvick. Harvick's a lock. So let's give the people another pick other than the 4 car.
All right, give the people another pick, and I'm going to say Kurt Busch. I liked what he had going on there last year. He came from the back of the pack, got back to 7th after getting a penalty early on in the race. Had that race not had the weather conditions and the thing shake up the way that it did, I still think he gets far enough up there to put himself in the chase at Homestead.
Now, when you made that pick, Matthew Dillner, he kind of shrugged a little bit. So are you thinking the same way Regan Smith is thinking?
I was thinking exactly that because, he finished 4th there last year, Kurt Busch. And if you look at what that team did this past week at Las Vegas, overcoming that pit road speeding violation and coming up for a top 10 finish, they are the team to beat, in my opinion, besides Kevin Harvick there. So if you're going to pick Kurt Busch, I've got to go with a double deuce because Joey Logano was, second in practices, second in the race last week. Exactly. But he wants one more spot. So Joey Logano had a top 10 finish the last time we were in Phoenix. I think he's a guy other than Kevin Harvick and Kurt Busch you could put on your radar.
Well, Regan took your pick. You took my pick.
Oh, great.
So what I think I'm going to do is I'm just going to go with Dale Jr. I think he's going to make it back-to-back. I think the 88 is going to end up in victory lane. Fantasy Live. Play it. It's going to be a fun race weekend to keep up with that and watch it. So log on to NASCAR.com, Fantasy Live, and be sure to set your lineups before the race. Now is the part of the show where we get to kind of pick the headline we think is going to end up coming out of Phoenix. So, Regan Smith, give me your best headline you think we're going to read in the papers on Monday morning.
Best headline. I'm going to go with Harvick dominates in the desert and it doesn't rain.
I like that one.
It seems like every time we go to a desert, dude, it rains. What's up with that? I love the headline.
Past couple trips.
Yeah, I know, 2 trips in a row.
Brutal.
I would like to make a headline, a real Cinderella story headline, because I think we got to look out for Ricky Stenhouse this week on NASCAR Fantasy Live because he's had some really amazing finishes. But I can't help but think of Regan Smith's pick and my original pick for this race, Kurt Busch. So I'll say my headline would be the monster claws in the desert.
I think we're going to see something similar to what Regan Smith said. Dry spell over. It's not related to rain. It's Kevin Harvick hasn't won this year. I think Kevin Harvick ends up in victory lane at Phoenix International Raceway.
And he almost swept NASCAR Goes West last year when we have this 3-race sweep here throughout the West Coast. So the fact that he didn't win that first one, I know he's licking his chops.
Well, that's going to do it for the Dirty Air podcast this week. Thank you, Regan Smith, from calling in all the way in Colorado. We hope you're enjoying the West Coast swing. For Matthew Dillner, I'm Jonathan Merriman, and as Chuck Bush, who usually sits in his seat, says, make sure you jump out in the clean air and catch the leader, and join us back here on the Dirty Air next week.